The stars looked different from the bridge of the Vorthak warship. War Commander Zixtal stood with his forearms crossed, staring at the small blue planet spinning below. His red eyes gleamed with satisfaction. The humans would learn today what happened when weak species tried to claim territory in Vorthak space. "Commander, the human colony is directly below us," his lieutenant reported. The younger Vorthak's voice shook with excitement. This would be their first real battle since joining the Galactic Council. Zixtal nodded slowly. Intelligence reports said humans were soft creatures who cried when they felt pain. They had no real weapons, no proper military. They spent their time growing food and raising young instead of preparing for war. Perfect targets. "Begin the attack," Zixtal ordered. Far below on the planet's surface, alarm bells rang across New Haven Colony. Ben Walsh ran through the community center, his boots pounding on metal floors. People were screaming and pointing at the sky where dark shapes moved between the clouds. "Everyone to the shelters now," Ben shouted. As colony administrator, he had trained for this moment but never believed it would come. The nearest Earth military ship was 3 days away. They were completely alone. Sarah Martinez grabbed her 2 children and ran toward the underground bunkers. Her husband Tony was working in the grain fields on the far side of the colony. She prayed he could reach safety in time. The first energy blast hit the main power station. The explosion lit up the sky like a second sun. Then more blasts came, one after another, destroying buildings and vehicles. The aliens were not trying to capture anything. They wanted to kill everyone. In space, Lieutenant Commander Jake Murphy stood on the bridge of the UES Dakota, watching the communication screen with growing horror. His parents lived in New Haven Colony. They had moved there 2 years ago to help start the farming project. "Sir, we're still 3 days out at maximum speed," the navigation officer reported. Captain Lisa Carter clenched her fists. "Push the engines past safety limits. I don't care if we burn them out." Jake stared at the screen showing New Haven's location. The signal from the colony had gone silent 20 minutes ago. His hands shook as he tried to call his parents on their personal communicator. No answer. Back on the planet, Ben Walsh crawled through the smoking ruins of what had been the colony's main street. His left arm was broken, and blood ran down his face. The attack had lasted only 30 minutes, but nothing was left standing. The shelter where most people had hidden took a direct hit. Ben found pieces of metal and concrete where the building used to be. Sarah Martinez and her children were gone. Tony Martinez was gone. Everyone was gone. Ben dragged himself to the emergency communications bunker built deep underground. His fingers moved over the controls, sending out a distress signal to any human ship that might hear it. Then he activated the colony's black box recorder to tell the story of what happened. "This is Administrator Ben Walsh of New Haven Colony," he spoke into the recorder. His voice was weak and full of pain. "We are under attack by unknown alien forces. They came without warning and without demands. They are killing everyone. If anyone finds this message, tell Earth that we tried to follow all the galactic laws. We never hurt anyone. We just wanted to grow food and live in peace." The recording continued for several minutes as Ben described the attack. Then his voice grew more quiet. "The aliens are broadcasting a message now. They call themselves the Vorthak Empire. They say humans must leave 3 star systems and pay them tribute every year. They say this attack is just a warning of what will happen if we refuse." Ben coughed and more blood came up. "I don't think I will live much longer. My injuries are too bad and there is no medical help coming. Please tell my wife on Earth that I love her. Tell everyone that the people of New Haven died as humans should, trying to protect each other until the end." 3 days later, the UES Dakota arrived at New Haven. Captain Lisa Carter led the landing party down to the planet's surface. What they found made even the toughest soldiers cry. The colony was completely destroyed. Buildings were melted metal and broken stone. The grain fields that had fed thousands of people were burned black. Bodies lay everywhere, including children and elderly people who could never have been a threat to anyone. Jake Murphy found the communications bunker and Ben Walsh's body next to the recorder. Ben had lived just long enough to tell their story. Jake played the message and listened to The colony administrator described his people's final hours. "Sir, we found something else," one of the soldiers called out. He was standing next to what had been the colony school. On the wall, someone had written a message in charcoal. "We forgive them. They do not understand what they have done." "Captain," Lisa Carter read the message and shook her head. Even facing death, the colonists had shown mercy toward their killers. It was the most human thing she had ever seen. The Vorthak had expected their attack to make humans afraid. They thought Earth would either surrender quickly or attack back in anger, proving that humans were just as violent as every other species in the galaxy. They had no idea what was really coming. Jake Murphy stood in the ruins of his childhood home, holding a photo of his parents. His mother had kept a garden here. His father had taught engineering to the colony children. Both were gone now, killed for the crime of growing food on an empty planet. But as Jake looked at the words on the school wall, he began to understand something important. The colonists had died as humans, showing forgiveness even to their murderers. Now it was time for the living to show the galaxy what that really meant. The Vorthak thought they had won an easy victory. They had no idea they had just made the worst mistake in their species' history. The news of New Haven's destruction reached Earth 12 hours later. President Helen Davis sat in her office reading the reports over and over. 50,000 people dead. Entire families wiped out. Children who would never grow up. Her military advisors wanted immediate action. General Robert Hayes paced back and forth in front of her desk, his face red with anger. "Madam President, we have to hit them back hard," he said. "Show these Vorthak that humans are not weak. Our fleet can be ready to attack their nearest base in 48 hours. President Davis looked up from the reports. "And then what, General? We kill their people, they kill more of ours, and it never ends?" "That's how war works," General Hayes replied. "They started this fight. We have to finish it." But President Davis was thinking about something else. She remembered her grandmother's stories about the old wars on Earth, before humans learned better ways to solve problems. Millions had died before people understood that winning a war and winning peace were two different things. "Get me Admiral Rick Stone," she ordered, "and call Dr. Amy Foster. I want to know everything about these Vorthak before we do anything." Across the galaxy, other alien species watched and waited. The Galactic Council had seen this pattern many times before. A strong species attacks a weak one. The weak species either surrenders or fights back. Either way, the strong species usually wins and takes what they want. Ambassador Kethvar of the Centauri Republic spoke to his aide as they watched news reports about the attack. "The humans will probably surrender within a week. They have no real military power. Their colonies are spread too thin to defend." His aide nodded in agreement. The Vorthak chose their target well. Humans seem to care too much about individual lives. They will not risk more deaths. But the Vorthak were having their own discussions. War Commander Zixtal met with his officers on their command ship. They expected a message from Earth within days, either surrendering to their demands or declaring war. "The humans are taking too long to respond," one of his lieutenants said. "Maybe they are planning some kind of trick." Zixtal laughed, a harsh sound that made his sharp teeth show. "What tricks could they have? Their ships are slow and their weapons are weak. They spend more time building hospitals than weapons factories. No, they are just afraid and trying to decide how to beg for mercy." Meanwhile, Admiral Rick Stone was having very different conversations with his fleet commanders. Captain Lisa Carter sat in the briefing room aboard the UES Dakota, still angry about what she had seen at New Haven. "Admiral, my crew is ready for action," she said. "Just give us targets and we will make the Vorthak pay for what they did." Admiral Stone nodded slowly. "I understand your feelings, Captain, but we are not going to attack their military bases." "Captain," Carter looked confused. "Sir, then what are we going to do?" "Something they will never expect," Admiral Stone replied. "We are going to help them." The plan that President Davis and her advisors developed was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of preparing for war, Earth shipyards began working on a different kind of mission. Medical ships were loaded with supplies and equipment. Construction vessels were filled with materials to rebuild damaged worlds. Dr. Amy Foster worked day and night studying everything known about Vorthak culture. What she found surprised her. The Vorthak had achieved space travel only 300 years ago, much more recently than most galactic species. Their homeworld had once been shared by multiple intelligent species, but the Vorthak had conquered, or destroyed all the others. They think conquest is normal, she explained to President Davis during a video call. On their world, the strongest species survived by killing everyone else. They believe this is how the universe works. So they have never seen cooperation between different species? President Davis asked. Never between equals, Dr. Foster replied. They have slaves and servants from conquered worlds, but they have never seen true partnership. The idea that different species might work together as equals is completely foreign to them. This gave President Davis an idea. She called another meeting with her military commanders, but this time she included civilian leaders as well. Engineers, doctors, teachers, and scientists joined the discussion. We are going to show the Vorthak something they have never seen before, she announced. We are going to show them what humans do best. The response began to take shape. Lieutenant, Commander Jake Murphy requested permission to lead a diplomatic mission to the Vorthak homeworld. His request shocked everyone, including his captain. Jake, they killed your parents, Captain Carter said. Why would you want to negotiate with them? Jake looked at the photo of his parents that he carried everywhere now. Because my parents would have wanted me to find a way to stop this without more people dying. They believed in talking to people, even people who seemed like enemies. His request went all the way up to President Davis herself. She studied his file and saw a young officer who had lost everything but still wanted to find peace instead of revenge. It reminded her why she had faith in humanity. Permission granted, she decided. But you will not go alone. Across the galaxy, alien observers watched with growing confusion as Earth's response became clear. Instead of warships heading toward Vorthak space, they saw medical vessels and supply ships moving in the same direction. Instead of weapons being manufactured, Earth's factories were producing construction equipment and humanitarian aid. Ambassador Kethvar called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. What are the humans doing? This makes no sense. They should be preparing for war or surrender, not whatever this is. Other council members were equally confused. The Zephyrian delegate studied the intelligence reports with all four of her eyes. Perhaps this is some kind of elaborate trap. Maybe they are hiding weapons inside those medical ships. But deeper scans showed no hidden weapons. The human ships really were carrying medical supplies, food, and construction materials. It was the strangest military response anyone had ever seen. The Vorthak received these intelligence reports with their own confusion. War Commander Zixtal stared at the data streams showing human ship movements. They are not moving warships toward our territory, his intelligence officer reported. They are sending medical vessels and supply ships. It makes no tactical sense. It must be a trick, Zixtal decided. No species responds to an attack by sending doctors and engineers. They are planning something. But what the humans were planning was something the galaxy had never seen before. As Jake Murphy prepared for his diplomatic mission, President Davis made one final decision. She would address the entire galaxy directly, explaining exactly what humanity intended to do. The message would change everything. The broadcast went out across the galaxy at exactly noon, Earth time. Every species with communication technology received President Helen Davis's message. She sat at her desk in the White House, looking directly into the camera with calm, steady eyes. People of the galaxy, she began. I am Helen Davis, President of Earth and representative of humanity. 3 days ago, the Vorthak Empire attacked our peaceful colony of New Haven. They killed 50,000 innocent people, including children and elderly citizens who posed no threat to anyone. Across the galaxy, alien leaders watched the broadcast. Most expected to hear either a surrender or a declaration of war. What they heard instead shocked them completely. The Vorthak have demanded that humanity withdraw from 3 star systems and pay tribute to their empire. President Davis continued, We will not do this, but our response may surprise you. We choose not to answer violence with more violence. Instead, we will show the Vorthak and the entire galaxy what humans truly believe in. War Commander Zixtal watched the broadcast from his command ship surrounded by his officers. He leaned forward in his chair, waiting for the human to reveal their weakness. Tomorrow, Lieutenant Commander Jake Murphy will travel to the Vorthak homeworld, President Davis announced. He will carry with him humanity's official response to this attack. Jake Murphy's parents were among those killed at New Haven. Yet, he has volunteered for this mission because he believes, as we all do, that understanding is stronger than hatred. The Vorthak officers looked at each other in confusion. Why would humans send the son of victims to negotiate? It made no sense. President Davis was not finished. Along with our diplomat, we are sending medical ships to Vorthak territory, not to attack, but to help. Our doctors and engineers will provide aid to any who need it, regardless of their species or allegiance. This is what humans do. We build instead of destroy. We heal instead of harm. Ambassador Kethvar of the Centauri Republic nearly fell out of his chair. Are they insane? He asked his aide. They are offering medical aid to the species that just attacked them? The aide could only shake his head. He had studied many species over his long career, but humans were proving impossible to understand. 2 days later, Jake Murphy's ship approached the Vorthak homeworld. The UES Mercy was a small diplomatic vessel, escorted by a single medical frigate. Both ships had their weapon systems completely shut down and their medical bays wide open for inspection. Vorthak Command, this is Lieutenant Commander Jake Murphy, requesting permission to land. He spoke into the communication system. I carry an official message from Earth's government. The response came quickly. Human vessel, you will be escorted to Landing Bay 7. Any aggressive action will result in your immediate destruction. Jake looked at his small crew. Dr. Amy Foster sat next to him, reviewing her notes about Vorthak culture one more time. Behind them, 3 other diplomats tried to hide their nervousness. Remember, Dr. Foster said quietly, they expect us to either beg for mercy or try to trick them. They have never seen a species respond the way humans do. The landing went smoothly. Vorthak soldiers surrounded the human ship, their weapons ready. War Commander Zixtal himself came to meet the delegation, curious to see what these strange creatures would say. Jake Murphy stepped out of his ship wearing a simple diplomatic uniform with no weapons or armor. He was tall for a human, but still much smaller than the average Vorthak. His brown hair was neatly combed and his green eyes showed no fear. War Commander Zixtal, Jake said with a slight bow. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. The Vorthak commander studied the human carefully. This young male looked nothing like a warrior or a beggar. There was something in his eyes that Zixtal could not identify. You are the son of the dead colonists, Zixtal stated. Why did your leaders send you here? Do they think we will show mercy because you lost family? Jake looked directly at the alien commander. No, sir. They sent me here because I have something important to tell you. The meeting took place in the Vorthak Command Center, with delegates from many species watching through communication links. The entire galaxy wanted to hear what the humans would say. Jake stood in the center of the room, surrounded by armed Vorthak soldiers. Dr. Foster and the other diplomats sat at a small table nearby. War Commander Zixtal took his place on a raised platform looking down at the humans like a judge. Speak your message, human, Zixtal commanded. Jake took a deep breath and began with words that no one expected to hear. War Commander Zixtal, representatives of the Vorthak Empire, I have come here today to offer you an apology. The room went completely silent. Even the Vorthak soldiers stopped moving. An apology? The humans were apologizing? I apologize on behalf of all humanity for our failure to establish proper diplomatic contact with your empire before we settled in what you consider your territory, Jake continued. We should have reached out to you years ago to discuss boundaries and establish formal relations. Zixtal's forearms tensed. This was not what he had expected. In his entire life, no one had ever apologized to him. The Vorthak took what they wanted by force. Other species either fought back or surrendered. No one had ever said they were sorry. I apologize for our failure to understand your culture and customs, Jake went on. We made assumptions about what was acceptable without asking for your perspective. This was wrong of us. Dr. Foster watched the Vorthak commander's face carefully. She could see confusion and something that might have been surprise in his red eyes. The other Vorthak officers were whispering to each other, clearly unsure how to respond. Furthermore, Jake said, I want to share something with you that might explain why humans act the way we do. He activated a holographic projector that showed images from Earth's history. The pictures showed ancient humans fighting each other, cities destroyed by war, and millions of people suffering. Long ago, Earth was like many worlds in the galaxy, Jake explained. Different groups of humans fought constantly. We killed each other over territory, resources, and beliefs. We thought strength meant the ability to destroy our enemies. The images changed to show more recent history. Humans working together, former enemies shaking hands, and cities being rebuilt after wars. But we learned something important. Jake continued. True strength does not come from the ability to destroy. It comes from the choice to build instead. We discovered that cooperation makes us stronger than conquest ever could. War Commander Zixtal leaned forward, studying the images carefully. He had never seen anything like this. On his homeworld, the strongest species had simply killed all the others. There had been no cooperation, no peace between different groups. You claim your species learned to work together, Zixtal said, but you are all the same species. Of course you can cooperate with your own kind. Jake smiled and activated another set of images. These showed humans working alongside other alien species, including some that the Vorthak had conquered. We do, not just cooperate with other humans, Jake said. We work with anyone who is willing to work with us. This is what we are offering you today. The room erupted in surprised voices as aliens across the galaxy realized what they were hearing. The humans were not just apologizing for settling in Vorthak space. They were offering genuine partnership with the species that had just killed thousands of their people. War Commander Zixtal stared at the human diplomat, trying to understand what he was really hearing. Was this some kind of elaborate trick, or were these creatures actually offering forgiveness and friendship to their enemies? War Commander Zixtal stood up from his chair, his forearms spread wide. You speak of cooperation, human, but words are easy. Anyone can claim they want peace while planning war. Jake Murphy nodded calmly. You are right to be suspicious, Commander. That is why we brought proof of our intentions. He activated his communicator and spoke clearly. Admiral Stone, please begin the demonstration. Across Vorthak space, something unprecedented began to happen. Human medical ships appeared near 3 different Vorthak colony worlds, but instead of attacking, they broadcast offers of medical assistance to anyone who needed help. On Vorthak Colony 7, Captain Lisa Carter commanded the UES Hope as it approached the planet. Her crew had spent weeks preparing for this moment. The colony below was home to several different alien species, all conquered by the Vorthak over the past century. This is Captain Carter of the Earth medical vessel Hope. She broadcast on all frequencies. We are offering free medical treatment to any being who requires assistance. We have doctors trained in treating multiple species, and our medical bays are open to all. The response from the planet was confused silence at first. Then slowly messages began coming in. A Zephyrian mother whose child was sick with a disease the Vorthak could not cure. An elderly Centauri whose injuries from the original conquest had never healed properly. Even some Vorthak soldiers who had been wounded in recent battles. Captain Carter's medical teams worked around the clock. They treated everyone equally, asking no questions about politics or allegiance. A Vorthak officer lay in the same medical bay as a Zephyrian slave, both receiving the same quality care. Back on the Vorthak homeworld, War Commander Zixtal watched reports from his colonies with growing amazement. The humans were actually doing what they claimed. They were healing his people's enemies and his own soldiers with equal care. This must be some kind of trick, he said to his intelligence officer. They are probably gathering information or poisoning our people. Sir, our medical scans show no signs of deception, the officer replied. The humans are providing genuine medical care. They have saved over 300 lives in the past 6 hours, including 47 Vorthak soldiers. Dr. Amy Foster stood up in the meeting room, ready to deliver the next part of their message. Commander Zixtal, may I explain something about human psychology? The Vorthak commander gestured for her to continue, though his red eyes showed deep suspicion. Humans evolved as hunters like your people, Dr. Foster began. But we were also social creatures who lived in groups. We learned that the strongest hunting pack was not the one with the biggest teeth, but the one that worked together best. She activated new images showing human evolution and development. When humans first reached space, we made the same mistakes your people made. We fought wars and conquered weaker civilizations. But those victories made us weaker, not stronger. The images showed Earth's colonial period, when humans had enslaved other humans and fought constant wars over territory and resources. We discovered that ruling through fear requires enormous energy. Dr. Foster continued. You must constantly watch for rebellion, constantly use force to maintain control, but cooperation creates energy instead of consuming it. War Commander Zixtal thought about his own empire. It was true that maintaining control over conquered species required many soldiers and constant vigilance. Rebellions happened regularly, and resources were always being diverted to suppress them. Jake Murphy took over the explanation. When we stopped trying to conquer other species and started working with them instead, something amazing happened. Our former enemies became our greatest allies. He showed new images of humans and aliens working together on massive projects, space stations built by mixed crews, scientific discoveries made by multi-species research teams, and planets terraformed through cooperative efforts. The species we once fought became partners in exploring the galaxy, Jake explained. They shared their knowledge and abilities with us, and we shared ours with them. Together we accomplished things that none of us could have done alone. One of the Vorthak officers spoke up. But how do you maintain order without conquest? How do you prevent chaos? Dr. Foster smiled. We learned that most beings do not want to cause chaos. They want to live safely, care for their families, and contribute something meaningful to the universe. When you give them the chance to do these things willingly, they become more productive than any slave ever could be. War Commander Zixtal was beginning to understand something that frightened him. These humans were not weak at all. They had discovered a form of power that the Vorthak had never imagined. You are saying that cooperation makes civilization stronger than conquest, he said slowly. Much stronger, Jake replied. A conquered species will always look for chances to rebel or escape. But a species that chooses to work with you will fight beside you against any threat. The demonstration continued as reports came in from human medical ships throughout Vorthak space. On Colony 12, human engineers were helping to repair infrastructure damaged in recent storms. On Mining Station 5, human doctors had stopped an epidemic that was killing workers of all species. Most shocking of all, the humans were teaching their medical and engineering knowledge to local doctors and technicians. They were not keeping their advantages secret but sharing them freely. Why do you give away your technology? Zixtal demanded. This makes no strategic sense. Jake looked directly at the Vorthak commander. Because knowledge grows when it is shared. Every doctor we train saves more lives. Every engineer we teach builds better things. When our allies become stronger and smarter, we all benefit. The implications of this hit Zixtal like a physical blow. The humans had turned their enemies into allies and their allies into an extended civilization that spanned multiple star systems. Each species contributed its unique abilities to the whole. Meanwhile, the Vorthak Empire was spending enormous resources just to maintain control over unwilling subjects who contributed only what they were forced to provide. Sir, his intelligence officer reported quietly, we are receiving messages from our conquered worlds. The local populations are asking if they can receive human medical aid as well. War Commander Zixtal felt something he had never experienced before. The certainty that his people's way of life was the only possible way was cracking. These humans had shown him a different path, one that seemed impossible but was clearly working. There is something else you should know, Jake said quietly. The same ships that are providing medical aid to your colonies could have been converted. to carry weapons instead. The same organizational ability we are using to coordinate humanitarian relief could be used to coordinate military strikes. The room went silent as the meaning of these words sank in. The humans were not helping the Vorthak because they were weak. They were helping because they were strong enough to choose mercy over revenge. Dr. Foster added the final piece of the puzzle. Commander, your people attacked us because you thought we were weak. But consider this. The most dangerous predator is not the one that must hunt to survive. It is the one that is strong enough to choose whether to hunt or not. War Commander Zixtal stared at the humans with new understanding. They had not come to surrender or to threaten. They had come to offer something the Vorthak had never seen before, a choice between the old way of conquest and a new way of cooperation. For the first time in his life, the Vorthak commander began to wonder if there might be a better way to live among the stars. 3 weeks passed before War Commander Zixtal made his decision. During that time, human medical ships continued their work throughout Vorthak space. The results were impossible to ignore. On Colony 7, a plague that had been killing workers for months was completely stopped by human doctors. On Mining Station 3, human engineers fixed a reactor that Vorthak technicians had been unable to repair for 2 years. Most importantly, the conquered species in Vorthak territory were no longer staging constant rebellions. "Sir, productivity is up 30% across all our colonies," his economics officer reported. "The conquered populations are working harder than they have in decades." Zixtal knew why. For the first time in their lives, the slaves were receiving medical care when they got sick. Their injured were being healed instead of being left to die. Some were even learning new skills from human teachers. But what really changed everything was the earthquake. It struck Vorthak Colony 4 without warning, a massive tremor that collapsed buildings and trapped thousands of beings underground. The colony's emergency response teams were overwhelmed within hours. Captain Lisa Carter received the distress signal aboard the UES Hope. She was 3 days away from the disaster site, but she immediately changed course and pushed her engines to maximum speed. "All crew to emergency stations," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We have a rescue mission." War Commander Zixtal also received the disaster reports. His own rescue ships were closer to the colony, but they lacked the advanced equipment needed for major disaster relief. He faced a choice that would define his future. He could order his ships to handle the rescue alone and let thousands die, or he could ask for help from the humans who had been treating his people as equals. The choice was harder than it should have been. Asking for help meant admitting that humans could do things the Vorthak could not. It meant accepting that cooperation might actually work. In the end, the decision was made for him by his own son. Lieutenant Caxtal was serving on Colony 4 when the earthquake hit. He was trapped in a collapsed mining tunnel with 30 other beings, including several from conquered species. The communication with the surface was weak, but Zixtal could hear his son's voice through the static. "Father, the humans are coming to help us," Caxtal reported. "Captain Carter's people have equipment that can cut through the collapsed rock. They say they will have us out within 6 hours. War Commander Zixtal listened as his son described the rescue operation. Human engineers worked alongside Vorthak soldiers, sharing tools and knowledge freely. No one asked about species or status. Everyone focused on saving lives. "The human doctors are treating everyone equally," Caxtal continued. "They saved 3 Zephyrian miners who were badly injured. They could have helped only the Vorthak first, but they treated whoever needed help most urgently. When the rescue was complete, over 2,000 beings had been saved. Many would have died without human intervention. Among the rescued was Caxtal himself, pulled from the collapsed tunnel by Captain Carter personally. The reports from the disaster site told a story that Zixtal could no longer ignore. Human and Vorthak teams had worked together perfectly, each contributing their strengths to the rescue effort. The conquered species had volunteered to help, working harder than they ever had under Vorthak orders. Most importantly, when the emergency was over, productivity across the entire colony increased. The different species were no longer suspicious, enemies forced to work together. They had become a team. War Commander Zixtal called an emergency meeting of the Vorthak High Council. For the first time in his military career, he was going to recommend something that went against everything his people believed. "Council members," he began, "I have spent weeks studying the human response to our attack on their colony. I have watched their medical ships heal our people and our enemies with equal care. I have seen their engineers share knowledge that could have given them military advantages." The other Vorthak leaders listened with growing concern. Some already suspected what he was going to propose. "The humans have shown us a form of strength we never knew existed," Zixtal continued. "They turned our attack into an opportunity for cooperation. They made our enemies into allies, and they offered to make us allies as well." Elder Vextar, the oldest member of the council, spoke with a voice full of doubt. "War Commander, these humans may have superior technology, but conquest has served our people for centuries. Why should we change now?" "Because conquest is making us weaker, not stronger," Zixtal replied. He activated a display showing productivity reports from across the Empire. "Look at these numbers. Our conquered worlds produce just enough to avoid punishment. But in the 3 weeks since humans began working with our people, productivity has increased dramatically." He showed more data comparing Vorthak colonies to human settlements. Human colonies produce 5 times more food per worker. Their mining operations extract 3 times more resources. Their manufacturing is more efficient than ours in every category. "How is this possible?" another council member asked. "Because their people want to work," Zixtal explained. "They are not forced to labor under threat of death. They work because they see benefits for themselves and their families. They innovate because they are allowed to think freely." The council members looked at each other uncertainly. This went against everything they had been taught about power and control. War Commander Zixtal made his final argument. "The humans could have destroyed us. The same ships carrying medical supplies could have carried weapons. The same coordination they used for humanitarian aid could have been used for military strikes. They chose mercy over revenge because mercy made them stronger." He paused and looked directly at each council member. "I recommend that we accept the human offer of alliance. Not because we are weak, but because working with them will make us stronger than we have ever been." The vote was close, but it passed. The Vorthak Empire would formally apologize for the attack on New Haven and accept humanity's offer of partnership. Jake Murphy stood in the council chamber 3 days later, listening as War Commander Zixtal read the official apology. It was the first time in galactic history that a conquering species had apologized to their intended victims. "The Vorthak Empire formally apologizes to humanity for our unprovoked attack on New Haven Colony," Zixtal declared. "We acted out of ignorance and fear, not understanding that strength comes from cooperation, not conquest." The news spread across the galaxy within hours. Other predator species watched in amazement as the Vorthak began implementing reforms on their conquered worlds. Slaves became citizens. Former enemies became partners. More importantly, other species began requesting similar partnerships with humanity. The galaxy had seen that cooperation really did create more prosperity than conquest. Jake Murphy returned to Earth 6 months later. He stood in the memorial garden built where New Haven Colony once existed. A simple stone marker bore the names of all who had died, including his parents. But next to it stood a larger monument with words in dozens of alien languages. It read, "From loss we learned to love. From pain we chose to heal. From enemies we made family." Representatives from 50 species had contributed to the memorial, including War Commander Zixtal himself. The Vorthak leader had planted a tree from his homeworld next to flowers from Earth. As Jake read the memorial inscription, he realized his parents would have been proud. Their deaths had led not to revenge or more violence, but to the greatest expansion of peace and cooperation the galaxy had ever seen. The predators of space had learned something that changed them forever. The most dangerous species was not the one that chose to hunt, but the one that was strong enough to choose not to hunt at all, and that made humanity the apex predator of the galaxy.